Why do we always wait until the 31st of December to, to change something? Why don't we just do it like today? If you're like legit and you want to get going, you want to change, you want to make this change in your life, you want to do this. What are we waiting around for? Let's just get going here.
Everyone has talents, capabilities, possibilities for themselves to create a life that is meaningful and rewarding. The challenge is that you might have to overcome some adversity, some fears, some doubts, and that's just hard. I think that's the hard part. I think we believe the hard part is, how am I going to make money from this thing? I actually think that can be a little bit easier than we think. It's just like it's a good excuse to not pursue something that's scary.
Welcome to the Redefining Retirement podcast. My name is Corey. This is Mike. And today we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions, or should I say new life resolutions. Mike, tell us like what you do really quick.
Yep. I'm Mike Buccialia. I am the founder of MindWorks. And I think the simplest way to explain MindWorks is it is part executive coaching, part mindset mentoring, and part self-discovery. The idea is to understand what you're trying to get out of life and what's in your way, remove the things that are in your way so that you can live an intentional life that is fulfilling and rewarding.
All right. And as far as I go, my big thing right now is just I want to help Gen Xers basically, bet on themselves, right? So I'm all about that. Whether you're betting on yourself, like, hey, I know I need to diversify my income, or I want to bet on myself and I started a business, or I bet on myself, for the last 20 years running a business. You are the people that I want to help. And that's why we run this particular podcast, Redefining Retirement. And we're doing it in a way that like, it's forward looking, right? We're not just gonna use the old lessons,
Mhm.
wait till you're 40, 59 and retire and you'll have a pension and then you can go golfing, right? And that's not what this is about. This is about finding something that you want to do, that you just enjoy doing so much that it doesn't even really matter if you retire or not, right? So that's what this is about. And before we get started, wherever you're listening to this, or if you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and just subscribe to this, because this is the kind of stuff we're going to talk about all the time. I'm going to bring experts from, all kinds of places, and they're all going to be the same age as we are, most likely, right? I don't want to, I never say never, but we want to hear it from people that are actually doing it, that are, in our shoes. So definitely subscribe. And we always have nice little treats for you in the description, cheat sheets and I don't all kinds of stuff, cheat sheets, consults, all kinds of stuff. So just check down there. So yeah, I'm getting kind of getting all revved up. So yes, back
Well, let
to
me,
the
let me jump in
go,
quick, Corey,
go
just
ahead.
to kind of
Yep.
key in off of the theme that you're saying, both the theme of what, redefining retirement is about, and then the theme of this episode, I guess.
All right.
But yeah, this was a massive just shift for me when I started to, I guess, get some belief in myself, which I didn't know I was lacking, quite frankly, that actually I could create and or pursue a life that was just meaningful to me, full of both hobbies and income producing activities that were so meaningful and rewarding that I wasn't looking forward to ending it or to retiring from it. And we need breaks and rest no matter what, but not like these typical, I need 2 weeks vacation because I need a break from this thing that I ended up doing that is not fulfilling and rewarding. And I'm just doing it for pretty much the sole purpose of income that I just want to be done with. And this was a massive, massive mindset shift for me of like, why am I doing something I just want to be done with? Like
Yeah.
I never even bothered to think outside of that framing or that box to think like, are there things in this world that I could pursue and do that I actually just enjoy? And I'm not saying I enjoy every single ounce of it or every moment of it, but on the whole, right? When I look back at
Yep.
a week or a month, I've overall enjoyed the contributions I've made, the efforts I've put forward, the things I'm engaged in, the people I'm doing it with. And I just never even allowed myself to contemplate that. I never really had examples of that. And now that I have shifted that, I think the main thing that prevented me from doing that was not because I wasn't capable, not because I don't have talents, even though I was honestly believing that about myself, was one, I didn't have that self belief. And two, I at one point was just like unwilling to face the fears and things, the insecurities and the doubts about myself to really pursue that. So I really genuinely believe that everyone has talents, capabilities, possibilities for themselves to create a life that is meaningful and rewarding. The challenge is that you might have to overcome some adversity, some fears, some doubts, and that's just hard. I think that's the hard part. I think we believe the hard part is how am I going to make money from this thing? I actually think that can be a little bit easier than we think. It's just like it's a good excuse to not pursue something that's scary. And hopefully we can provide not only some inspiration, but some tools and tactics to help people overcome that.
It's definitely what you said is pretty much the same origin story as I have, right? Like when I was looking to change careers back in 2013 or just wanted to get out, it's like, well, if I do something, do I really want to have to go through this again? Because I had been through this like multiple times. I was in my 20s. I was jacking around, just doing stuff that wasn't great. And then I, eventually got out of the factory job stuff. And then eventually ended up in the a mechanical drafting position for almost 17 years. And so I had already reinvented myself once already. So then I did it, then I'm looking at doing it another time. And it was like, man, like, what am I doing wrong here? Do I have to do this again? Because you did at some point, or I did at some point when I was, when I got that drafting job, I'm like, this is it, man. I made it. I made it off the factory floor. And I'm just, what my dad used to say, shitting in high cotton. I don't know, whatever, like, so, yeah. So, but eventually I was like, no, this ain't it, and that's what kind of led me to this whole situation. And to kind of, segue into the whole, what does this have to do with New Year's resolutions, Corey? Well, I've been thinking about it. And like every year I think about this, and I've been saying this to my friends. It's like, why do we always wait until the 31st of
Mhm.
December to, to change something? Why don't we just do it like today? Like, I mean, if
Mhm.
you're like
Yeah.
legit and you want to get going, you want to change, you want to make this change in your life, you want to do this. It's like, what are we waiting around for? Like, let's just get going here. Like, so, that's why I said new life resolution, not necessarily New Year's resolution. And the search marketing geek that I am, I just was curious before we jumped on here, and I'm like, I go, how many searches are there? I'll ask you, how many searches do you think there are every year in January and February for New Year's resolutions? Do you have a
Good
guess?
Lord. I have no idea. I mean, I don't even know how many searches generally are happening. I don't know.
Oh,
20 million.
okay. All right. I was thinking that it was going to be a lot more than it is. It's still significant though. There is, on average every December and January, so both of them together, there's 450,000 people looking up searching
Okay.
for New Year's resolution. So anyway, I thought it would be more than that, but either way, that's a lot of people that
Mhm.
I think could probably listen to this podcast. So if you're out there, 240, 240, if we could just get, 15 to 20% of that, all of a sudden, Mike and I are doing this podcast every day. I don't know. We'll see.
Daily. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the whole thing. And I go back and I trace through, like, I think one of the bigger ones was that I had what biggest epiphanies about this was around the COVID time. I mean, I had been thinking about this before this, but around COVID, I don't know if I can say that on YouTube and not get canceled or banned or whatever. So I'm gonna have to edit that. But around that time, I had gotten sick a few times that year, or I had the one time, and I'm like, you know what, dude, I was like 235 pounds. I'm like, I gotta figure this shit out, man. I'm like, instead of going down, I won't get into all the other stuff, but I'm like, I need to drop some weight. I need to, fortify, my health a little bit more.
Mhm.
And I could have sat there and it was I could have sat there. I'm like, and this was sick over Thanksgiving, by the way, which is a whole other story. It's like I couldn't even taste my turkey. I could,
Uh,
I love Thanksgiving, and I couldn't taste anything because I had COVID. So anyway, thinking about this, December 15th, I started just all I did was I started tracking my calories. And just so you know, I
mhm,
didn't just this isn't the first time I did a diet. It's not the first time I did it's not the first time I did any of this stuff. I've been working on this stuff for years, a long time. However, just something clicked and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get even more. And all I did is started tracking my calories on December 15th. It's like, no,
mhm.
I didn't wait till the
Wait,
first.
right.
Didn't wait
Yes.
till the like, you know what? When New Year rolls around, I'm gonna jump out there and I'm gonna start working on this. It's like, no, I just did it that day. And and so I actually I've been tracking my calories since that day still. I got on my phone actually I could prove it to you.
Yeah,
But
you're over a year, man. Nice.
it's getting actually it's like it's 1700 days I just crossed a couple weeks ago.
Right. It's okay, 2 years. Yeah,
Seven,
right.
yeah,
Okay.
so it's been a but what I learned is like, hey, I was able to drop those calories, but I still um drop the pounds over the holidays, right? So I learned I could go through the holidays because what I did is I kind of had like an 80-20 approach, right? Like I can go off the rails a little bit like on Christmas Day because the rest of the week I was under like what 2200 calories. New Year's Day, big day for like myself and a lot of my friends. We like to go out and have some cocktails and we're we we turn we do a lot of stuff on those days. We let loose a little bit. And again, I still lost weight through that whole thing, right? And I felt good. And if I had waited till the end of the first of the year, I would have had those learning experiences of like, you know what, I can do this and I shouldn't let the holidays be an excuse. I can make it through that. And at the end of the day, March, I think it was like in the beginning of March, I ended up going from 235 in on December 15th to 212. And I've been at about 212 for a couple of years. And then I don't know, I've been working on it a little bit even more recently. But I just tell you that because that is like the biggest example of like, I didn't wait till the New Year's. I just
Yeah.
started.
Well,
It's like,
let's talk about that because first of all, that's commendable and let's talk about the what why typically we don't just start right away. Like it's a form of procrastination. We'll come back to that. But what you just said there is the key point. When we want to make a change, it's because we want some result, right? And there's just the logical thing to think about is like, why am I delaying or deferring the result? Because especially things that might take time, maybe obviously to lose weight is going to usually be at least 3 months, unless you're doing some crazy crash diet, right? But that's going to take at least 3 months, maybe 6 or 12, depending on the person and what they're doing, whatever, right? So the most logical thing to think is like, if I want the result, why am I deferring something I want? Why am I waiting? And I literally mean to ask yourself that question because there will be an answer. And typically we are delaying is a form of procrastination because we're either scared about the effort. We're just afraid it's going to be hard, right? It's hard to start to restrict yourself in some way in a diet, right? And there's all kinds of ways you could approach it differently to make it not feel
yep,
that way. But that's what happens. Our mind body goes, oh, this is going to be hard. If I haven't conditioned myself to do hard things, I'd rather delay that. And it's just the mind and body's way to go like, yeah, you'll get to that later, which is another way of saying I don't have to do that hard thing. Right? Like,
yeah,
that's really kind of to some degree psychologically what's happening. And then the other thing is we tend to have this mindset of like preparation. Like I somehow need to be prepared to do this thing, to start this diet. Well, let me look up a diet that works for me and let me do some research and let me maybe test some things out or let me ask some friends what's worked for them. This preparation phase it can be a form of procrastination as well. And we'll put a link to this, but there's this great Arthur Ashe quote. I'm going to get a little bit wrong, but he says basically like, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And his whole point is you don't need any more preparation to begin the first baby step on a path to the change you want to make, the person you want to become, thing you want to feel, the activity you want to be doing. The whole point is start now with whatever small step you can, because otherwise all you're doing is delaying and deferring. And we all know this, we all live this. Most likely in most situations, it never happens. You just don't ever start. So the point is you have to start at some point. Why defer it? And literally, I'm literally meaning this. Ask yourself, what am I deferring for? What is the benefit in waiting? And you'll probably start to tell yourself, well, I'm not ready. I need to have this. I need to have that. And what I'm hoping is useful here is to, if you're going to doubt anything, doubt those excuses, doubt that little voice that says you're not ready. You're always ready to do some step at this very moment. It's figuring out what step that is and realizing everything else is procrastination and delaying and most likely on a path to avoidance. So I am with you. We know the logic of like, why am I deferring this thing I want to happen? Let me just start now. And whatever excuses come up with, start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, and start taking that step, because then it's momentum. And then obviously you get the thing that you're wanting sooner. I mean, we all know the logic there, but it's our mind and that feeling like, oh, this is going to be hard. Let me just defer it. That's the thing we're combating. That's the thing we got to overcome, really.
I think too that another thing that should be in your mind is you're not necessarily looking for like, oh, hey, I'm going to do this diet plan for the month of January or something like that, because those always have like this very finite, like there's a finish. And I'm not saying don't do things, because I definitely do like little programs and stuff like that to kind of jumpstart me. But at the end of the day, everything that you do, you want to turn it into a practice, a daily
For sure.
practice, because you're gonna want to do this the rest of your life. Just being healthy and getting off weight or enjoying your work or whatever it is that you're trying to, resolve in your life is something that is going to be a lifelong practice, right? It's not just like, okay, I lost 5 pounds. Great. I'm done now. No, it's like do something that keeps the pounds off forever. And it's like, I've, like I said, I've done a millions of programs, and maybe not millions, but like a lot of programs. I've fasted. I've done keto. I've done everything. Workout programs, you name it, and I've taken a little bit of each one of those along the way, and they've formed the foundation for what is a practice every single day. Like I go, every day I get X amount of steps, perhaps, or every day I know if I'm going over 2,200 calories, danger, danger. Like I know, I but that's born out of like because I just started doing it and I got into practice. Because I always think back probably even to this is maybe even part of the origins of this whole conversation was in the mid 2010s when I was going to the Y. I still go to the Y, but back then I would always notice it's like I could never get on a machine in January, right? It's like, my God, it's like, what are the treadmills are full, like everything's full because it's like the beginning of the year.
Yeah,
But you know
right.
what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But we'd always joke with the other, like the other members that we're regulars, like we're there like every day, or
Yeah.
every couple days or whatever. And it'd be like, it's all right. They'll be gone by February. I mean, it's like clockwork every year, right? It fills up and whatever. But I think about that. I'm like, and every time I tell people, I'm like, you have to think about it as a long-term commitment. It's like, I don't know. It's just like, I don't want to get down the rabbit hole and some other things that I got going
No, no,
on.
but so I think you're hitting on another important distinction here, which is the theme of this is like a resolution or a goal is only as good as the intention behind that goal and really understanding who you want to be. How is this goal serving your life, serving who you are showing up as, right? And we rarely do that. We just think like in a moment of frustration, oh, I've put on a few pounds. I'm not happy with that. I want to get rid of those pounds. And we don't really assess like why that's meaningful to us. What is our real motivation? What am I going to feel at the end of that if I pursue that goal? And do I want that to just be a one-time thing? Like, okay, I lose the 5 pounds, then what? I put it back on or whatever, right? Like we rarely actually kind of get to the source of this. And what you're describing is a very important distinction. So let's say I have a goal of losing 10 pounds. To some degree, that is somewhat out of my control, right? There's like elements and factors there. Like if I were to break a leg, I might not be able to, burn calories in the same way or whatever, right? But in large part, there's some element that we can influence on that stuff. But more so what you're talking about is I could even accomplish that. I could work really hard. I could be super disciplined. I could use a lot of willpower to restrict my eating and exercise a lot and meet that goal. Then what? I have no system in place. I never really understood why that mattered to me. I have no kind of framework to fall back on once I meet that goal. And so, what you're describing, this is a really important distinction, I think, is having an intention. And intention is a really important distinction between a goal. A goal is some sort of objective result, outcome based thing to aim for, and it's important to have. But largely, there's usually many factors outside of our control whether we can actually accomplish that. The intention is the daily way we show up, the daily activities. So if my intention is to be a healthy person, yes, I need to define what that means for me, but it's probably the basics of I want to be intentional about my food choices on a daily basis for my life, right? I want to be intentional about uh, exercise and moving my body. And that simply means going to the gym 3 days a week, pretty much no matter what. Doesn't mean we don't go on vacation or get sick once in a while, but the intention is to show up routinely. And this is when we start to create a life and an intentional life. The results of those efforts of how you show up are going to vary. But what you're building is a sense of self that says, I'm a person that is healthy. I'm a person that is active. I'm a person that makes healthy choices in my food for the most part. And then the other thing is you can measure that more frequently because it might take months to lose 10 pounds, but you can every day go, did I follow my intention to choose healthy meals, nutritious meals? And if you didn't, that's okay because tomorrow's a new day. We don't need to again, kick this can down the road. It's like, all right, let me do better tomorrow. And if you do that process enough times, now you're just living a healthy lifestyle. You are a healthy person. You become this person versus met this goal.
It's a huge, this is such a huge topic. It's like like talking about health and all that. But the one thing that happens too is if you take the long term viewpoint, what happens is it kind of starts to build a momentum. Like I was
Yeah.
telling you before, I've got my it's a Lose It app. It's called Lose It. You're looking for one. Looks like a little scale. But I know I have 1,700 days on there because I've been logging my calories for 1,700 days. And has every single one of those days been like, I do have cheat days on there? Like, okay, so there was a Saturday or a Sunday, like where I ate so much because we went out for, you wouldn't believe how much a prime rib dinner is with a few old fashions and a couple of beers. I mean, that's thrown off. So usually those I'll just enter in as cheat days. However, the process of just entering those calories in every single
Yeah.
day builds a momentum. Like I can't imagine, like it almost gives me heart palpitations thinking like that I won't log my calories, right? Like I mean
Mhm.
it's become that much momentum. At first, yes, it was a pain in the ass cuz like friends will be like, "Wow, how do you do that?" And I'm like, "Well, after a while, and it's not going to happen overnight, but like, over the course of the weeks and the months that you're doing this, what happens is like you start to memorize like, oh, well, that looks like about 5 ounces. So I'll just put that in there. And like, that's
Right.
about this many calories. And this is how much, this is that many calories. You start to learn it and it makes it faster, right? To blog it. But also it kind of ingrains into your head that like, you know what? I remember when I ate that, I felt like crap after I
Yes.
ate that, right?
Yeah.
So you start to see stuff like that. You start to see how many calories you're consuming. So like it just gives you guardrails, right? Like you're gonna have times where you're gonna be like, whoa, hey, we just went into the 4,000 calorie thing this weekend because I was, hanging out with my friends by the lake all week and just stuffing my face. But you know you got to bring it back in, by the time you go. So you're kind of managing it, and it keeps you from going off the rails. But again, the biggest thing is it creates a momentum. And that's like with anything like that I've ever done. And that goes for like right now as I'm kind of transforming my business, like we talked about before we got on here. It's like I am trying to, I'm just doing the hard stuff now because I'm trying to find that momentum. I'm trying to find that thing that's, it's almost like a flywheel that's going to just start spinning. And once it gets going, you're locked in and you're going to go. That's every time I had any growth in my business, it's the same thing. Like I had to grind through the early days. And eventually, when I found something and I caught on to it, boom, then you just starts to pull you through. So that's kind of like the thing that you're looking for. Um, and not
Yeah,
just like,
because
hey,
you're showing
done,
up consistently versus just chasing a result, right? Like you have to have both. The goal is the measure. Like if I don't know if I'm making progress, if I don't know what direction I'm heading, then we get kind of lost and it fizzles in that regard. But the same thing if we have a goal without a clear understanding, the intention, the motivation, the feeling that we're trying to get through that process, then the goal itself becomes too complicated. We don't have anything underlying it, and there's no routine reward system inbuilt unless we get to the goal. And then it's like, oh, I put on a pound instead of lost a pound. Well, now I feel discouraged and I just give up. Versus like, no, I'm systematically, intentionally taking these steps. And I know I, for the most part, followed my intention daily or at least, several points over the week. And that becomes fulfilling and rewarding. And that becomes the motivation. And that becomes the momentum you're talking about. It's like we have to be clear on our intentions and how we want to show up daily so that we can get that daily reward recognition of like, oh, I didn't show up today the way I wanted to. Okay, now I'm motivated to do that tomorrow. I did do that today. So that's encouraging and that's momentum you're talking about. But it's really important that we understand what our intentions are. And then the other thing about intentions, that's something we can commit to. I can't I can have a goal of winning a marathon, but there's so many factors, so many other competitions and other things to face. Like that's not an intention that I can't commit to that. An intention is something I can commit to, which is like I'm every day going to put my shoes on and go for a run, even if that's 1 mile. Obviously I'm going to need to do more than that. But the point is, if I just stay with that consistent intention, I can commit to that. Commitment to this process is the fundamental game changer. That's the only way you're going to, it's not the only way, but it's the most productive, the most rewarding, easiest way to pursue a goal and pursue a lifestyle, right? A consistent, continual lifestyle, because it kind of becomes your identity. I am a person who shows up every day and makes healthy choices and does what I need to do for my work and my health. Simple as that. But we tend to not do those things.
yep. And you just have to allow yourself to kind of, not be perfect as well, right? Like you wanna have like I always say 80/20. Like if 80% of the time I am game on, great, but there's gonna be those 20%. Like I said, when I'm like for calories for sure, it's like, holy crap, I just, went way over my calories for the last, 2 days in a row. And then you see the scale on Monday and you're like, oh my God, I'm up to 217. Oh my God, like, and it's just like, but that's like kicks your butt back into shape. But you wouldn't know that if you weren't tracking that.
Yeah.
Um, and it's the same thing with like working out kind of stuff. It's all the same. I'm trying to think for more examples for people like with businesses because it happens with me all the time too. There's like I don't just come down here, like we talk about redefining retirement and loving your work and all that stuff. It's like I don't come down here to my office every single day like, oh my God, yeah, today's the
Yeah.
day, man. We're
Right. Right.
we're taking, there are days where it's like, God dang it. Do I really want to be going make it I don't really want to do that today. Or I'm not in the mood to make a video today. I'm not,
Yep.
like, I want to make videos. I like making videos, but some days I'm just like, God dang it, my hair doesn't look right. And I don't got the right shirt
Yep.
on. I'm like, I start to
Yep.
find all kinds of excuses not to go do that. So that still happens. Even with these podcasts, it's like, I love doing them. And then it comes down to editing them and posting them. And I'm just like, oh man, like you get in your head. So it's not
Yep.
always going to be perfect, but if you just do something, I think a lot of times I used to use my guitar as an analogy. Like people are like, how do you practice more? And it's like, well, I first of all, I would put my guitar in front of me, so
Yeah.
it always be like in the room. So like I would just go up there. Sometimes I might go up there and pick it up and play it for 2 minutes and then set it down. Some days it turns into like a 2 hour session, like maybe I wrote a song, but but you're not gonna, that the odds of that happening are like slim to none if that thing's buried in the back of a freaking, a storage unit,
Yeah.
or way in your basement somewhere. It's like it's not gonna happen. So that's another thing. You want to put stuff in front of you that kind of
Yeah.
that kind of
James
helps you
Clear,
as well.
Atomic Habits, he calls that an environmental cue, right? And it's the same thing, Corey, is like, if this stuff is truly important to us, and we got to get clear on that. Why is this important? There's a process called the 5 whys. Have you heard about that?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So you ask yourself why 5 times so you can really get to the core of what is important about this. And then you use that as your motivation and your anchor. But anyway, if something is really important and you're clear on that, then you want to set yourself up for success. So having an environmental cue just means like putting something in your field of vision regularly to be a reminder and a cue. So if it's your guitar right there, it's like, okay, I need to pick this up. Even if you do it for 5 minutes, that's something, it's consistency, right? So these are very effective.
You know, he came out with that after I thought about that technique of putting the guitar out
I
there. And
need
it's
to
like,
give you
so
credit, man, but
I've
let's
really
tag
missed
him
an
in here.
opportunity there, man. Like, I mean, as huge as Atomic Habits is, just think, I'd be having a whole different conversation with you today if if I would have just known to take the guitar story and marry it to productivity. Like if
Yeah.
I would have just known. And so so yeah. So yeah, that's the thing. And that's actually a good book for people to read too. Um a lot of people, somebody just at the gym was giving it to somebody that never heard of it. It's amazing to me like how big that book is and
Uh-huh.
people will still haven't heard of it, So it's like
Mhm.
just kind of crazy. Another reason that all of us should be sharing our knowledge in public because
Yeah. Sharing
like
information.
you
Yeah.
might think that everybody knows about, the 4 Hour Work Week book, or you might think everybody knows about, you know, I don't want to say the Bible, but even the Bible. There's people that don't even
Mhm.
know what the Bible is, and it's like the oldest book in the history of mankind. And people don't even know what it is. So it's like you just never know. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of a way to, some other examples from my business. But I keep getting distracted, and maybe this is a
Yeah.
segue.
Well,
Go ahead.
so I mean, uh, the theme is the same, right? You apply it to business. It- I think what's important at the beginning is, and again, got to be careful not to over prepare and over plan here, but
Yep.
just to have some basic ideas of especially if you're running your own business. It might be a little bit different if you're working in a job and some of the direction and strategy is pretty much handed down to you. Of course, you have your own agency of how you approach executing on that. But let's just say for your own business, it's understanding on a weekly basis what are the activities that I need to do. Like, obviously, every business needs some components of things that you just have to do for the business, but then also getting really clear about your intentions of like, how much time do I want to spend on strategy and creativity? And just being intentional about, did I make time for myself each week for strategy, creativity, whichever way you want to look at that? What are the activities I know are most impactful for the health or growth of my business? Usually that's going to be some sort of sales or marketing. Was I intentional? Did I follow through on those? The results of how effective your marketing campaign or how effective your sales calls were are not, again, entirely up to you. You can constantly improve, but at the end of the day, it's other people making decisions, right? So you can
Yeah.
help them with that decision process. But the point is, it's just really being consistent of like, did I give myself space to be creative and strategic? Did I execute on the fundamentals? And did I learn and improve in some way across a week of those activities? And that consistency over time will just feel good because you just know I showed up and I did the things. If we only give ourselves credit for results, we're setting ourselves up for
Yeah.
letdown because we don't win every single week, to your point, right? About not being perfect. But if we validate ourselves on showing up as best we can each day and over the span of a week, then we can start to go, okay, like I am doing the things and I'm holding to my intentions on the most part, 80-20 rule, right? And if I didn't do it to my liking this week, then I have net week. We can constantly kind of iterate on this, right? And I just think just approaching it that mindset versus only focusing on the outcomes. And then we don't get what we want, we get discouraged. It's just such a fundamental shift, I think, right? Obviously, we need the outcomes to be markers of like, did this work or not work? They're feedback loops for sure. But if they're the only thing we're using to validate, like if I did a good job or not, we're setting ourselves up for disappointment versus like, did I show up and align with my intentions?
There's a couple of phrases that I kind of think about as I, you know, think about what we're talking about here. But there's the 1% better like every day. I've heard
Mhm.
some
Yep.
people like James Altucher talks about that a lot. I know there's other people that talk about it too, but he's the one that comes to mind for that. And I just always think about like another one is like stacking bricks, right? Like you're just stacking them that you add another brick, right? And what happens to bricks over time? They become walls, they become buildings, they become like, cities, so it's like you just have to kind of keep doing that. And there was another phrase that I always used too, like I used it with my kids and now they hate it. But but I'd be like, how do you eat the elephant?
Mhm.
Yep.
Mhm.
One bite at a time, right? Like, I mean, you don't just sit down and shove it in your mouth, you gotta nip away at it a little bit. So those are like some of the things that I just had these mantras that I have in my head that kind of remind me like, you know what? Maybe I'm not gonna, get everything out today, or maybe I'm not gonna do this or that,
Right.
but like at least do one thing.
Right.
Just
Right.
just get something done. Because even if it's only like, like the guitar, like even if I only picked it up for 2 minutes, at least I gave myself a shot. And you know what?
Yes.
I did play a couple chords.
Yes.
you know,
Well,
it was
let's use your momentum story too, right?
yep.
Because each little action builds momentum, but the opposite is true. Each inaction builds momentum, or I guess lack thereof, in the other direction. So it's momentum of avoidance. It's a momentum of procrastination. It's momentum of delay. It's momentum of like not
Mm,
doing the thing.
like
Versus
negative
if you
momentum.
just do one little action, it's a step in that direction, right? And that I think I hope this lands. I hope we're giving people tangible things they can try to implement and activate, because and realize and catch themselves of like, oh my god, every time I make a choice to not do that thing, it's momentum against me. And every time I just take one small action, it's just building that momentum, building that muscle memory, if you will, and starting to steamroll. It's like, oh, I did it yesterday, I can do it today. And it's like a little bit and a little bit. And the next thing you know, it's just feeling easier because it's a little bit more habitual and it's more of a pattern. And that's just, it's easier to default into that. But if we default into inaction and not doing, we're really struggling. Right. So I hope that's helpful.
I think, just to kind of tie a bow on it, and then I want to talk about a old story that just remembered from New Year's Eve. But I'll I'll finish this up. But first, I think I'm not saying don't go out there and start like an exercise program, or don't shy away from buying that course or whatever that you think is going to, help you learn how to do whatever it is that you need to do to start a business. I'm not saying that at all. In fact, go do that. But don't wait till January 1st to do that. Do that today. Like, I mean, what
Yes.
it is, and just start the process. However that is that you need to do that. So that's like the big net, because every day you wait, and it's so cliche, is just, it's just another day of whatever you're frustrated with, like it's just you're not taking care of it, so that's kind of like my big takeaway. What is yours? And then I want to tell you this interesting story
Yeah,
from
I
New
mean,
Year's Eve.
I don't have a different takeaway, right? It's the same way we opened, that I think is the point, is like whenever we're delaying, we're actually setting ourselves up for inaction and avoidance, and it's hard to overcome that. So don't make it any harder on yourself. And two, the logical thing to understand is every day we delay is a further day we are away from our goal, away from the reward, away from the satisfaction or the improvement in our business or life that we're looking for. So we can logically understand that doesn't make sense to delay it. There is no benefit to delay. There's none. Whatever we convince ourselves of, because, oh, I'll be more ready, I'll be more prepared, those are just stories and excuses disguised as valuable ideas, right? And so it's catching ourselves with those things. That the main thing is like, if we're talking ourselves out of action ever, we should question that. And we should find a way to get started, get that baby step momentum. Yes, there might be some planning and research that can take place, but then at least start that now, right?
Yeah.
And start the actions and activities they're actually putting into practice, whatever it is we're trying to accomplish, and minimize spending most of our time in planning and preparation and feeling like we need to be ready. That may never come. We're ready to do something now and take that action. So I think that's the key theme about how to avoid delaying and avoid and procrastinating.
So next time you think about New Year's resolutions, change the years to life. So it's a new life resolution. That's the kind of resolution you should be making right there. So big takeaway. There you go. The bow has been tied. And now, do you, Mike, you're old enough to remember Y2K, right? Do you remember that?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. All right. All
Mhm.
right. I have to ask. I know that you're in my range, but then some people are like, they're just on the cusp and maybe they were like 5 or something like that. And
I'll
they
tell
don't
you my
really.
very quick story that I was
Oh, yeah.
just
Go.
out of college or maybe my last year of college, I don't remember, but I'd racked up a bunch of credit card debt. I was in a bar in Philly with my college buddies, and I remember, I swear this was my hope, my dream at that moment. I was like, I really hope actually Y2K crashes the financial systems and it wipes out my credit card
Yeah.
debt. I really
Yeah.
was like, this would actually be amazing for me at my point in life when I'm like, whatever, 21 or 22, and I had like, I don't know, 10, 20 grand of credit card debt. I was like, that would be actually amazing if financial institutions collapse and I just get my credit cards wiped out. So that was
That
my
actually,
version.
I could see that. I happened to be in a decent place at about that time in 2000, but about 5 to 10 years earlier than that, I was definitely would have been hoping the same thing you were. Um, but mine was like, I remember I got really sick before the new year. Like
Uh,
I know something was going down after Christmas and I just never got better. And I was the kind of guy, I had a really bad sore throat. So I would every day it just kept getting worse. I went to the doctor and they're just like, oh, I don't know, and you don't have strep or nothing. And they're like, oh, it's probably just the thing or whatever. And it's like, I won't go into that. But anyway, fast forward like 3 days later, I'm like extremely dehydrated. Nothing's better. I can't even swallow. It's like almost like my throat is like closing, right?
mm,
I, so I go on New Year's Eve and I go to the emergency room there. I go back and they're like, all right, well, we're gonna send you from our town to the hospital that's a half hour down the road. They have a ears, nose, throat specialist. So I go there and he like, what took everybody else or the other doctor like a week to figure out or not figure out was that he's like, well, I can just he looked at it and said 2 seconds. He's like, I can go in there and I can you got a what do you call it, like a cyst or something in your back. And he's like, I can go in there and I can lance it, or we can just, you get this history of tonsillitis and you can just go and we'll just take it out and then you don't have to worry about it again. I'm like, do that one. So, what does that involve? Like, well, we can have you in surgery in a couple hours. So that was on New Year's Eve
wow.
of 1999, New Year's Eve, 1999. So I go in there, I'm go to surgery, wake up the next, as before everything starts happening, how like all of a sudden the bell starts going down or whatever. So I'm sitting in my hotel room. I'm like high as a kite off of like Lortab because they're just giving me like pain meds,
Uh-huh.
like, and I'm just sitting there watching the TV like, all right, hey Jim, we're in, it looks like everything's still on. We're in New Zealand, and like there's been a couple minor problems. So I'm sitting there and I felt like have you ever watched The Walking Dead? Did you ever watch that show at
No,
all?
I don't want. No,
No,
I
you
got
didn't.
to.
Okay. Well, the opening scene is like before the apocalypse, like
Uh-huh.
literally the zombie apocalypse. One of the first scene of the show is like the main character wakes up in a hospital bed and he's like all strapped down to all these things, and like basically like what's going on, like no nurses, the hospital room's dark. Well, it turns out while he was out, like he had the zombie apocalypse happen. So it's like, and he wakes up, and I don't know, it'd be better if you saw the scene, but
Yeah.
but that's basically kind of what it felt like. I'm like, oh my God, here I am. I'm like attached to machines. I'm like, if everything goes down, like, and I'm
You're
sitting there,
right.
like, I can't rest because I'm like sitting there thinking, like, I'm watching with intent, like every hour. It's like, okay, we're in Japan. Looks like, looks like everything's fine. And then slowly I was like, okay, that's cool. But it was just kind of funny. I remember that was my Y2K story. It was just like, that was my partying like it was 1999, in other
Yeah.
words.
Yeah. Yeah. Slowly watching to see if the world goes into demise or not. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, here I am. I'm like in a hospital bed, like my tonsils are gone. I can't even do nothing. And my girlfriend's not even visiting me. My girlfriend at the time, she was probably a good thing that I don't know. That's a long story, but
Yeah. That sounds like a different story.
yeah, it is. It's a very different story. So yeah. So anyway, there you go, people. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. If you've got any, and I'm talking to the people in the camera or on the listening to the podcast. If you got any funny New Year's Eve stories or whatever, throw them in the comments. Or if you just don't even know where to start, or if you want to give me an excuse or give Mike an excuse of why you can't start until
Yeah.
January 1st, I'd love
Yeah.
to hear them, man. Throw them down there. I dare you.
For sure. That would be awesome because I bet there's a lot of common ones. So it would be cool to see, and that's usually helpful for people. And like that's be the most helpful, beneficial thing. Share what's holding you back. What are your reasons for not getting started? Whatever. But also, I would love to see if there's like a whole Y2K story comment generate like people's Y2K. I haven't thought about that in a while, man. That's pretty
Yeah,
funny.
like, was there somebody that actually had a Y2K incident?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, I
like,
never like
wonder.
it was a big non-event, right? As far as I was concerned. I don't remember anything like massively going down, but
Yeah, and now that I think about it too, it's like, you wonder why a lot of us are so cynical from our generation, because I mean, there's a lot of things to be cynical about, like being a Gen Xer, right? Because we've had a lot of stuff over the years. We were like, we had a full brunt of cable TV, um, advertising, and like, I think
uh,
really ramped up for us, as opposed, the credit card companies went ballistic on us like in the early 90s, like, so I think that made us cynical. But then you get into something like Y2K, and it's like, oh my God, we're all gonna die, we're all gonna die. And then like nothing happens, and it's like, all right, So you you go through stuff like that, and now people wonder, like, why don't you care? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I'll kind of believe it when I see it, I guess, or like we'll see what happens. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, you kind of get a sense that maybe that's just one of the pieces of the puzzle. Maybe it's not the whole piece, but it's just maybe one of them. So yeah. So anyway, before we go, remind everybody, Mike, where to find you and what they can do when they find you.
yep. Mike Buccialia. I'm positive I'm the only person, Mike Buccialia, Buccialia on LinkedIn, or www.mymindworks.com.
All right, cool. And I just realized something. I think I might have stole your ex. I was making fun of you, because
You
like
were. I remember that. Yeah, you were critical of the ex.
I
Yeah.
swear to God, it was so subconscious. It wasn't intentional, but I just thought of that. And why
Love
am I
it.
saying this, people? Because I have a couple places where you can find me. One is redefiningretirement.io. That is where you're going to find the links to the podcast. You're going to find how to sign up for my newsletter and learn like all kinds of cool shit, so you can start your own business and find a life that you don't want to retire from. But I also started a community called the Works Shop, and it is work with an X, not a K. So that's why I kind of took it. And what that is that's just mainly for like business owners, people that are already in the trenches already, and they want to just peek behind the curtain of my like, geekiness, because I like literally, I always tell people I geek out on internet marketing and AI. So you don't have to, because I go down the rabbit holes. And
Yeah.
Mike knows this
I
from
can
our
attest.
conversations.
I
He's
can
like,
attest. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
how do you know that? When did you learn how to do? It's just like,
Yeah.
people are always saying that. Like, where do you find the time? I'm like, I just do. So
Yeah.
that's what that community is all about. So you can find all that stuff in the show notes. Otherwise, just a reminder, subscribe, hang out with us, get in those comments, give us your excuses and your Y2K stories,
Y2K.
and have a great new year if if I don't see you before that. So there you go. See you later, Mike. Have a good one.
Love it. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, everybody.